You're the president of the Franciscan School of Theology.
Mhm.
How do you see the world of academia and Franciscan theology? How do you see that having an impact on renewal on a societal level and a church level?
Mhm. Well, as Franciscans, we're fortunate that we've spoken a lot about St. Francis, but of course we've got St. Clare, and she gives us a spiritual tradition that kind of builds on Francis, I think helping us think more about wisdom literature than St. Francis did, helping us think more about divinization, about, how God is present within our lives in a very profound way. And then we can kind of turn to the doctors of the church in the Franciscan tradition, St. Anthony of Padua, but I would think particularly of St. Bonaventure. Um, and then some of our other great thinkers like Alexander of Hales or Duns Scotus or Peter John Levy, all of these people are going to be very much focused, and this is an academic word, but I'll say it, praxis, Praxis. And this is kind of the opposite of theory. Um, and this is, my experience of academia is that there's a lot of very practical people. All these institutions have to be run and we have to run them well. And so everyone involved in academia knows the importance of practicality. I think the Franciscan tradition, you know, in some ways kind of canonizes that and says that whatever solutions we're coming up with, we have to remember that those are solutions for human fulfillment. Those are solutions for transformation. Those are solutions for ongoing conversion. Those are solutions that help us love God and love our neighbor. Um, and so we need to be kind of dealing with those kind of very practical things. And, the Franciscan School of Theology is ultimately a school of ministry where we're training people for ministry. And, we live in a world right now where there's all these different kind of ideas about, how we're going to have renewal or how we're going to be Catholics. And you kind of see lots of different models and you'll see lots of kind of solutions, maybe wholesale solutions that involve radical change. But I would say, as a school of theology, a school of ministry, we're into kind of retail solutions. And retail solutions means patience, charity, and humility. That we have to always be teaching people how to work with those things. That we can have this kind of vision, this theory for how we're going to be a better Catholic Church. But we need to have the skills to work with other people. And if we're not training people to be more patient, to be more humble, to be more charitable, we're going to kind of really struggle with that. So the Franciscan School of Theology, like many other schools of theology across the country, are kind of very focused on that vision.
Yeah, I love how you brought it back to the practical
Mhm.
there because even when I was working on my capstone thesis,
Right?
I was spiraling into Bonaventure's Trinitarian
Hmm.
metaphysics, and then as I was just dizzy and disoriented, I was thinking about Francis like prohibiting his brothers from owning books
Hmm. Right,
and
right.
this seeming allergy that he had to knowledge and learning.
Hmm.
And not learning in a lived sense, but learning in a knowledge book sense. And what would your response be to someone who pushes back and says, Francis would be he would not want a Franciscan school of theology today.
Yeah, I think Francis was certainly trying to kind of make a point, and
Hmm.
what he really wanted was poverty with joy, and that's
Hmm.
voluntary poverty. We always have to recognize that poverty in and of itself is an evil, but when someone chooses voluntary poverty, then he wants that to be found with joy. I think Francis would be concerned, as I think we should all be concerned, if we're simply using academics or academia to kind of build up our status. And so I'm sure he saw some of that, and that's certainly, I see some of that. I see some of that in myself. And so Francis, was speaking with St. Anthony of Padua, a doctor of the church, and he said, I don't have a problem with with education. It just has to be on the knees, meaning that we need to have piety, and by piety I mean devotion, that we're kind of committed to love, to charity, and to humility. Um, and so those are the ways that I think Francis wanted people to go about. And it's very clear when you read Francis's writings that Francis read a lot, that Francis prayed a
Mhm.
lot. One of the beautiful things about the Franciscan tradition is just how grounded it is in sacred scripture. And you aren't able to ground it in something that you don't know and something that you haven't studied. So it's clear to me Francis did that work, and he just wants to make sure that we're not trying to kind of build ourselves up, but we're trying as best we can to kind of build up a community. So there's always going to be a struggle and a challenge with that. Um, but I really do believe that renewal is rooted in study. And Francis took that time away to study scripture. All of us are called to take time away um, from what we're doing in order to do it better. And if we understand our Franciscan tradition, and if we study our Franciscan tradition, we'll see kind of 800 years of trying to kind of contextualize what we're doing. So there's abuses. Francis saw those abuses. At the end of the day, he just said we need more devotion. So I think as long as we're trying to kind of lead with love, um, we'll hopefully get closer to that reality.